Here's something I should probably admit up front. I break my own rules. Not all of them, some are sacred. But some of them, I break deliberately. And honestly, I think that's what makes Forever World feel alive. Today I'm not going to cover the setup. You can visit my video, How to Build a Forever World in The Sims 3 That Won't Corrupt for that. The link is here. What I want to show you is how I actually play. The decisions I make in the moment. The lines I won't cross. And the ones I happily step over when the story asks me to. There are two rules I will never break. And they both exist for the same reason. Continuity. The first one is about time. Every rotation I pick a number of days. Right now is 7. And every single household in that rotation plays exactly 7 days. Someday I want to change that, let's say 4 days for the next rotation. That's fine. But within a rotation, everyone gets the same amount of time. I might play an extra day at a house if something happens that warrants it, but generally speaking I don't break this rule. Now when I say everyone lives the same rotation, I want to be precise about what that means. It doesn't mean they're all living the exact same day at the exact same time. What it means is that they're all living in the same era. The same window of time. Think of it like a chapter in a book. Every character is inside that chapter, but they're on different pages. And that distinction actually matters a lot when you're watching the story. Let's say I have two Sims the same age in different households. Both of them are supposed to age up from toddler to child in the same rotation in story terms. They grow up at the same point in their lives. But in practice, by the time I get to the second household, the first Sim is already a child. The second one still has to wait for their birthday. That's not a continuity error. That's just how the game works. And acknowledging it, calling it a range of time rather than a precise moment, solves the problem and makes the world feel more real. The second rule is seasons. Each rotation is one season. Rotation 1 was summer. Everyone lived summer. Rotation 2 is autumn. Everyone lives autumn together. That's not just a gameplay choice, it's a narrative one. Weather creates mood. A winter wedding hits different than an autumn one. And I want my Sims to be living in the same emotional climate. I also have the number of days for each season set to 7, so that each house celebrates its festival on the same day. This means that when I move houses, the season also changes, so I need to reset it to the correct season. I do this using the cheat code, testing cheats enabled true. Shift-click on the ground, select Seasons, change seasons, and then the season that corresponds to the rotation. Unfortunately, this has to be done every time I move houses, but it's quick and easy, so I prefer to do it this way to maintain a logical continuity of the seasons. And then there's the small but very specific rule about when I switch households. I always switch on Sunday, but not at 8 AM, which is when the game naturally starts the day. I switch right after midnight, somewhere between 12 AM and 2 AM. I learned this the hard way in my first rotations. When I switched at 8 AM, I'd arrived to a household where no one had slept the night before. So my first move every single time was just putting everyone to bed. Not very cinematic. But there's also a technical reason. When I switch households, I put the previous family into the caste system so they stop aging, and I remove the new family from that caste so their aging resumes. That transition takes about 4 to 5 in-game hours to fully process. If I switch at midnight, by the time it's 8 AM, the household is settled, the ages are counting, and I can just play. Beyond the rotation rules, there's another layer to how Forever World works. Every household plays a different challenge. House 1, the founding family, plays the Nothing is Free challenge. They have a role that no other family has. They're the only ones who can build. Community lots, businesses, new residences. That's their job. I did this on purpose. Because if every family could build, the city would grow faster than the people in it. You'd end up with 8 restaurants in 2 households. That's not a city. That's a food court. House 2 is a classic legacy. This couldn't be missing from this world. The family you'd expect to find in any Sims save. House 3 is a random legacy. Every generation is a surprise, even to me. And that makes the story have many unexpected things. House 4 is Isby. If you know what that means, I'm sorry in advance. One sim has the insane trait. The other has absent-minded. I control the insane one. Deliberately. It is exactly as chaotic as it sounds, and somehow it's become a comedy. House 5 plays a version of the Isle of Midnight Sun challenge. They live on a 10 by 10 lot and no one ever leaves. Ever. No errands, no socializing outside, nothing. A family completely contained in their own world. House 6 is the going solo challenge. One sim per generation, one lifetime wish. That's the whole story. Houses 7 and 8. I moved them in recently. I haven't started playing them yet. I'm still deciding what challenges they'll follow. Which means their stories are already mysteries even to me. You know that every house presents a challenge, but how do I decide when to move new sims? When to build new houses? New lots? That has to do with what I call harmonious urban growth. My reasoning is that there can't be more businesses than houses since a city has to grow as a whole. It's not an exact number. It's not that there has to be a community lot for every house, but rather that the number of each should be consistent with each other. If there's one more community lot than the number of houses or vice versa, it's not a problem. What I wouldn't do is have 10 businesses and only 2 houses. That doesn't make sense. More houses than community lots is more common, but more businesses than houses? How do those businesses survive if there aren't many sims in the town? That's the reasoning. Currently, I have 8 houses and 7 community lots, 3 of which are businesses. So when I grow the town, I'm controlling 3 things. Houses, community lots that aren't businesses, and community lots that are businesses. Not because I have a formula, but because I want it to feel like a real place. Now, everything else? The story decides. I do have a story written for my sims before I start. Each character has an arc, a direction. But that's a guide, not a script. And sometimes the guide has to bend. Willa Curly is a clear example where I changed her story on 2 different occasions. First, I had planned for her to be a scientist from the start, but I wanted to portray her as someone free and unconstrained by conventional science. However, since I haven't a school in the town yet, I couldn't choose her teenage trait, and the game assigned her the evil trait. This changed my plan, but it also opened up even more possibilities for her story, so I gladly embraced the opportunity. Second, and the most recent example, I aged up Willa 2 days before her actual birthday. 2 days. In challenge terms, that's technically cheating. But in story terms, I needed her father, Brad, to move in with Franco at the end of that rotation, because their story was dragging on too long and they needed to move on to the next stage. That of being husbands. But I didn't want to leave a teenager alone in a household I wouldn't be controlling for several weeks until it was her turn again. So I made the call. The other rule I broke is about who can actually live in my world. My principle is, no created sims. I only use NPCs who already exist in the game. But I needed a green sim, specifically green with very specific traits, for one of my challenges. You can't exactly find that roaming around. So I created her. I gave her exactly what the challenge needed and I moved her in. Against the rules? Yes. Did the story need it? Also yes. That's the hierarchy in Forever World. Story first, challenge second. Always. And that same philosophy carries into how I use mods. For the full list and setup, the link is in the description. What I want to talk about here is how I use them, not to control the game but to serve the story. I use NRAS story progression with the caste system. I also explained the setup in the video, how to build a forever world in The Sims 3 that won't corrupt. The caste system I use prevents sims in that caste from doing many things when I'm not controlling them, such as forming romantic relationships, having children, learning skills, or advancing their careers. This is to prevent things from happening outside of the main storyline. And also because I'm a bit of a control freak and like to be present in every moment, even when I'm letting them make their own choices. But this near absolute control causes some problems. If I want 2 sims from different households to have a romantic relationship, The caste system will prevent it and won't let the sim I'm not currently controlling have romantic interactions. This happened to me a lot with Franco and Brad when they still lived in different houses. So in those cases, I make an exception to the caste at the sim level. By selecting NRS from the sim's story progression menu, then sim options, I choose what I want to change. In this case, I change allow romance to true. It's important to do this only temporarily, only when they're together, and then change allow romance back to false as soon as they're not together. Otherwise, there can be caste issues. In other words, the exceptions have to be temporary and revert to their original settings once they're finished. But the technical aspect isn't the only thing they're good for. I use other mods like the taxi charge mod, or Ani's no shopping from fridge, to give the story a little more depth, not just to portray it in the videos but to experience it while I play. One last thing, and this is probably my favorite part of how I play. My Sims surprise me, constantly. In the founding household I had planned exactly 2 kids for Generation 3. But I made a mistake. I made Leon and Moira try for baby instead of Hoo-Hoo, and I didn't realize it until the game notified me of the pregnancy. Completely unplanned. I had a choice. End it with a mod or let it happen. I let it happen. That kid is now part of the story. I don't know what their role will be yet. But they exist, and that's interesting. I also pay close attention to romantic and friendship wishes. If a sim autonomously wants to become friends with someone or develops feelings, I take that seriously. Continuing with unplanned children, I had thought that Franco and Brad would only raise Violet when they moved out on their own. But a few days before moving, Brad wished to have a child with Franco, so the next time I get to play with them I'm going to grant Brad's wish. That's the game telling me something about who these sims are. My story bends to meet them. With all these rules, you might be wondering, why did I call this Save Forever World and not just the Build a City challenge? The difference is in what it's for. Right now, I'm in the building phase, laying the foundation, the houses, the families, the history. But once the city is complete, Forever World doesn't end. That's actually when it begins. The idea is simple. I open the save, choose a house, pick a challenge, short or long, play it and tell its story. No rotation. No pressure. Just a world I can return to whenever I want to try something different, and share that particular story with you. A world that's always there. My new Sunset Valley.